Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Guys, welcome back to r/IDontWorkHereLady, where people get mistaken as employees when they aren't. Guys, I hope you're having another wonderful day today, and you know the drill. Today's lineup of stories is absolutely awesome. So sit back, relax, because we're diving in. Oh, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for future stories. Now, I want to note that this happened when I was 18 years old. I'm a girl, 5 foot tall, and since age 16, I've always carried a pocket knife with a sort of trigger, just for my peace of mind. Also, I've got a thing about physical contact. I don't like family or friends initiating any sort of hug, pat on the back, etc. without asking. So I was in Target for the first time and I was by myself, sort of just checking it out, because we'd always been too thrifty to go to Target growing up. I was minding my own business, strolling the aisles with my basket of slightly overpriced herbal tea. I end up in this cool snack section where they had seaweed packets and tossed two in my basket when I realized that there was a man who looked to be in his early 40s. Now, I had seen him in the same aisles as me quite a few times, which is no big deal. It's just a coincidence, right? So I peruse a couple of more sections in the store and eventually end up past the kids section and see the same middle-aged guy sort of hanging back from me, but he's following me with more intent at this point. Now, I was getting a little nervous, but it's not like anything's gonna happen to me in Target. What's he gonna do? Kidnap me in the middle of Target with hundreds of people in it? I keep going and eventually I see the kitchenware section. I stop and look up at the signs to see where exactly I want to look around. Ah, there. I take a step forward and just as I do, the same man from earlier grabs me by the shirt collar and says, "Excuse me." And without hesitation, I grab my side. I deploy my knife, point it at him and say, "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Now, we're right outside of an aisle, and there's people around who saw him grab me. He looked shocked, slack-jawed, and everything. I repeat to him again just as loud and just as expletive-filled and said, "Who the hell do you think you are? Why are you following me? And why did you grab me?" The guy snaps out of it a bit and says, "Are employees even allowed to carry knives? What the hell are you doing? Where's your supervisor?" Now it's my turn to look dumbfounded. I told him, I'm not an employee, and even if I was, do you really just grab people wherever you go? So at this point, we've got a small crowd, and I feel safe enough to put my knife back into my pocket. He spits back, "Well, if you'd been paying any attention, you'd know that I've been following you this whole time trying to get your attention, but you just keep walking off from me. Aren't you supposed to help people in the store? Did you not hear a word I said? I don't work here." Now, the guy takes a step forward to look down at me, and he says, "All you had to do was say so. Instead, you pull a knife on me like some psycho girl." Now, the guy then points out that I'm wearing a red shirt, and I'm absolutely floored at this. I'm wearing a dark red and plaid crop top and black high-waisted jeans. What kind of Target employee do you see wearing a plaid crop top? Now, at this point, someone finally steps in to help. A tall, burly guy who looked like if Duck Dynasty met Sons of Anarchy. The guy gets in between us and pushes the guy back and tells him that's no way to speak to anybody. And he says, "I saw the whole thing. You grabbed her by her collar. She has every right to be defensive." So at this, the creep backs off, and Ducks of Anarchy, my hero, tells him to F off. Now, the guy fires off one last, "You crazy bitch," but then walks off towards the back of the store. I sincerely thanked Mr. Hero as I was truly grateful. Being a smaller person, even with a knife, you don't feel all that threatening. Another note, and yes, I know it's a bit paranoid to carry a knife everywhere, especially into Target. I also know I could have handled this very public situation without taking my knife out, but when fear kicks in, instinct takes over. I wouldn't say I regret how I handled myself, but that's just evidently psycho, crazy me. My friends, if you've been listening to these stories for a while, you know that it's never a good idea to put your hands on a stranger. I don't know what it is, but people apparently love to grab strangers, spin them around to get their attention. But the guy was an idiot. He acted like a stalker when he could have just stood there, waved and said, "Hi, excuse me, do you work here?" Like a normal person. So, for a little backstory, I'm in my junior year, grade 11. And I'm taking an education course, which basically teaches you how to be a teacher. We have to have field experience or practical work. We basically get sent to a school and put into a classroom to help the teacher. It's a great way to see if teaching is right for you. Well, the classroom I'm currently stationed in is a pretty good one. I know the teacher pretty well because she was my teacher and my brother's teacher when we were younger. This means she can trust me to do a lot more than other teachers probably could. Now, her class was having a back-to-school party, and the teacher asked if I would mind getting some sodas the night before, and she would pay me back for them. The reason she asked is because she forgot them. She's old. It happens. And of course, I agree. So I go to the store and grab the drinks and decided to also get a few small gifts, like candy or small toys, as they were cheap. By the time I finished, my cart was pretty full, but I was obviously shopping and not working. As I'm walking to the till, I decide to go ahead and grab some cheap things for me to have for dinner. I stop my cart and reach on the top shelf to grab a few things. When I'm turned around, a woman starts to dig around in my cart. I quickly stop and ask her, "What are you doing?" She says, "Well, aren't you stocking the shelves? I'm just taking some of the candy." Now, to be fair, I was still wearing my school uniform, which is pretty similar to the store's. Both are khaki pants and blue polos, but the store shirts have a store name on the back. I decide to give her the benefit of the doubt and say, "No, I'm shopping. I need this candy for school. Please put it back." Now, the lady starts getting huffy and says, "You're wearing the uniform. Stop lying or I'll have you fired. My husband's the manager." Now, I know she's lying. I know because my cousin is the manager. My cousin's also married, but definitely not to her, as he's gay. I told her, "I know that's not true, just give me my candy." I take it back from her and head to the till. As I'm checking out, I see her complaining to none other than my cousin. I pay and then decide to let her know that I know she's full of crap. I go and give my cousin a big hug and ask him how his husband's doing. Karen's face went bright red and she hurried off. What a way to shut down an entitled Karen, guys. My husband's the manager. I'll have you fired. No ma'am, I'm sorry, but he's not. The manager is my cousin. Seriously, guys, why do people lie about that stuff? Guys, if any of you are listening that work in retail, have you ever had anybody threaten you with that? And do you ever take it seriously? Please do let me know. Now, for a bit of backstory and context, I live in a fairly affluent area in Australia, where entitled parents and Karens tend to flock to cafes and my local Woolworths like no tomorrow. Nevertheless, I love living in the suburb. It's a safe area with a strong community, however, the rich entitlement can be draining. Anyhow, I digress. It was during the summer months of Australia, roughly 3 years ago. It was a quiet weekend at home for me. I was busy doing chores, like cleaning the house, vacuuming, etc. My mom, who I love dearly, is a bit of a clean freak. And one of my chores was to regularly clean our small outside patio during the summer. It's only about 1.5 meters wide, so it's not a large thing. During the warm season in Australia, we get droves of fruit bats, eating from the fig and avocado trees that overhang our patio, and that means a lot of bat scat. That year was particularly bad. So the actual story. So as per usual, I grab a hot bucket of water and the strongest soap we had and go scrubbing away the bat scat like a woman on a mission, routinely washing away the suds and scats with fresh hot water. Now, it's important for me to note that I live on the top floor of a 4-story building, which means that the water will slosh off the sides. And yes, I always check over the banister just in case people are walking along the sidewalk below. Now, another piece of relevant info for later is that we have a private enclosed garden on the other side of the pathway for residents to hold parties. Anyway, I was scrubbing and sloshing when I smell the distinct scent of cigarette smoke. I look over the side and see a woman, the Karen, and she's clearly not a resident, puffing a cigarette like no tomorrow. Now, my building complex has a strict no smoking policy in certain areas. One of these areas was the private garden. I wrinkle my nose at the smell but didn't say anything. I'm not really a confrontational person when it comes to these things. Some water made a fairly loud splash on the walkway floor, which must have alerted the attention of Karen. She says, "Oi, you can't do that." Now, at first, I thought she was talking to someone else, so I ignored it and continued what I was doing. She then says, "Oi, I'm talking to you." "Oh, me?" I point to myself, and Karen, in a snippy voice, says, "You can't do that. I'm getting soaked with your dirty water." Now, I was confused. She was standing really far away. There was no way the water could have hit her. But me being the peacekeeper, I reply, "Oh, I'm sorry if some of the water splashed you. I'll be done in a couple of minutes." Karen says, No, you need to stop. People live here and you're just making a mess of everything." Now I'm really confused. I told her, "Ma'am, I'm simply mopping my deck. I do this regularly." Karen then puts her hands on her hips and says, "And you shouldn't be cleaning it when residents are in the garden." It then clicks. Oh, she thinks I'm a cleaner. I told her, "Oh, I'm a resident here too, ma'am. I live in this apartment complex. This is my apartment." Karen says, No, I know full well that somebody else lives here." Now, a bit of context. I am adopted. My parents are Caucasian and I have Southeast Asian heritage. and I look relatively young for my age, so I'm often mistaken for the hired help. Unfortunately. I tell Karen, I know, I'm one of the people that lives here. Now at that, Karen scoffs at me in disbelief and says, "No, you're lying. The people who live here are white. Someone like you doesn't own and can never live in a place like this. It's too nice." Now at this point, I'm actually annoyed. I told her, "Ma'am, I am a resident. I live here. My name is this, and my parents are mom and dad. As a resident of this address, I'm allowed to clean my deck whenever I please." Now Karen is flustered, but gains her snippy composure, and she says, "Well, I'll inform the building manager that you're disrupting my quiet time. I'm a resident here too." So at this point, I'm almost shouting over the banister, and I say, "And I'll inform the building manager that you're smoking in a non-smoking area. I know full well that you're not a resident. I've never seen you before, and my building managers, who happen to be my next door neighbors and are good friends of mine, couldn't give a flip about me cleaning my deck." Karen finally shuts up. She's red with embarrassment and hastily puts out her cigarette. I finish my mopping and head back inside to make myself an extra strong coffee. I end up discussing the smoking matter with my mom. It turns out that Karen is one of the many caretakers for the old couple downstairs. As for Karen, she avoids me whenever she's on shift. On occasion, I do bump into her in the halls. I am always dressed up to the nines and greet her with a warm smile and always wish her a good morning. Guys, what a huge plot twist. It was Karen who ends up working there. I find the story so funny, how Karen was full of herself and pretty much looked down on OP as hired help, saying there's no way she can live there because of her skin color, when in fact, Karen wishes that she lived there. Absolutely beautiful. So my best friend and roommate works for a small independent print shop as a graphic designer. We live in the burbs, and the shop is located downtown about half an hour from our house. Oftentimes, I'll be downtown for an appointment of some kind, and I'll ride home with her rather than take the train. Usually by 4 p.m., the only people left in the shop are her and a specific coworker. So I'll just hang out in the front area of the shop with my laptop. At 5 p.m., they lock the door, and then both of them gather their things up over the next 15 to 20 minutes before actually leaving. They're often out of sight, packing up in the back. So last Friday was one such day. At around 5:10, a lady comes up to the door of the shop, which is a glass door. She sees me sitting there and starts tapping on the door. I look up and mouthed, "The shop is closed." She then yells back, "I have a question." I then point at my wrist and said loudly, "I'm sorry, the shop closes at 5 and I don't work here." The lady then grabs on the handle of the door and starts to shake it as if she can magically make the door open, and then starts pounding on the door again. So I set down my laptop and walk over to the door. She then screamed, "I only have one question. Can you let me in so I can talk to you?" At this point, screaming was really not necessary as we were only separated by a pane of glass. I told her, "Ma'am, I don't work here and the door is locked from the inside by key that I don't have. I can't let you in." She then screamed, "Why are you being such a dick? I know you're closed, but it's just one question." And then to emphasize her point, she slams her palm on the glass door, which absolutely shattered the glass. Honestly, I've never seen anything like it. The rings on her hand, combined with the force of the smack, totally shattered everything. It's not like it cracked and spiderwebbed out. It just went to shards and fell to the ground. Fortunately, I had stepped back. The lady blinks in shock and then starts to speed walk away. Fortunately, we're in a massive metropolitan city, and I was able to follow her only a half a block away before I saw a police officer. The officer walked us both back to the shop, with the woman ranting about how it wasn't her fault and if I had just let her in, blah blah blah. The officer calls for backup and 2 more officers arrive, and by this time, my friend and her coworker had come up front. They took another officer back to look at the security footage, and that was pretty much that. The lady gets arrested on the spot, and I had to give a statement, and I'm told I'll probably have to testify in court on behalf of the shop owner to get a civil penalty added onto criminal charges and help them avoid small claims, which I will gladly do. Well, ain't that something, my friends? I'm just so curious to what Karen's question was. Whatever that super important question was ended up causing a ton of trouble for her. Yikes. I hope she learned her lesson. I seriously can't believe she tried to run away after that. So I was working at a supermarket, stocking shelves after hours. One night, we ran super late as we were short-staffed. I didn't finish until about 2:30 a.m. After I left, the only place open for food was a 24/7 fuel station across the road that had a Subway in it. So I go in, say hi to the staff, and got my sub, and then put my headphones on while I ate. I was just kind of zoning out as I had just finished a 9-hour shift, so I was a little slow. A woman comes in and goes up to the counter. The server was not there, as it's 3 a.m. They have a bunch of other stuff to do in the back. So she's obviously seen me and moves closer. I'm oblivious listening to my audiobook. I look up when she's towering over me, glaring, and she says something. I take my headphones out. I said, sorry. She says, I don't mean to interrupt you. Okay. Now she's glaring at me full force. She says, I need you to do your job. I don't care if you're on break. Now I'm confused, still a little foggy, and she says, I need you to get off your ass and get to the counter. Oh, I finally get what's going on. I lean back and point to my shirt logo. I told her, I don't work here. I'm from the supermarket across the road. She says, don't give me that. I'm in a hurry. Now do your job. So by now, the server has come back to check on the noise. The server says, hey, is everything okay? Now, she does actually do a double take. She goes a bit red, but rallies herself and glares at me again. She pays for her stuff, and then in a loud whisper, she says, what's he doing here at this time of night? Kinda suspicious, if you ask me. And then she leaves. The server shakes his head, and we laugh it off. The best part is, she comes in a few weeks later. The same scenario at the petrol place. I'm eating, but I'm more alert. She comes in, sees me eating, and goes red. I yell out, hey server, that crazy woman is back. I then nod at her and say, can I help you with anything, ma'am? I don't work here, but I know how upset you get with the truth, so maybe I can pretend. The server comes out, she buys some gum, and leaves, never saying a word, her face bright red. I love how she thinks it's suspicious for OP to be there at 3 a.m. Karen, what are you doing in the store at 3 a.m.? Kinda suspicious, if you ask me. Okay, so a few years ago, I was visiting the zoo. Ever since my grandfather told me to always wear clothes in the same color as the zookeepers, I wear similarly colored clothing. It's an amazing trick that causes a lot of the animals to come closer, as they think you're bringing food. So I was there enjoying the view when suddenly some vicious lady pulls me aside and tells me that I should give her spoiled brats a tour. Now, it was this perfect family, consisting of a woman with fake nails and body with more plastic in it than our oceans. Her hair is as blonde as can be, with 2 kids so loud and obnoxious, and the father doing what he does best in such family, not being there. I told her kindly as possible that if she wanted a tour, there were guides she can hire near the entrance, as well as follow the free explanations at fixed times. Now, of course, this was returned with a look of disgust and fake eyelashes, followed by a scolding, during which she explained that she already paid for the tickets, that she would call her husband, who was friends with the people in charge of the zoo, blah blah blah. She also yelled at me for thinking that they would be fine with the explanation with other people there. She then dragged me to the nearest cage and demanded I start explaining to her children what these things did that was so interesting. The obnoxious little things immediately started banging on the window and yelling at the animals. I was coming to peace with it and thought, well, I might as well do something useful. So for the next hour, I gave the kids a tour while the mother went drinking, explaining to them in detail how touching the glass or rattling the cage of every specific animal is actually dangerous, with an explanation for every animal, such as that everybody knows that the roar of a bewildered cockatoo can actually make the cage vibrate so violently that it cuts through the skin, showing a nasty scar I have. Or that once, a child banged on the glass of the chimps, who then broke out and figured where he lived and kidnapped him a week later. So after I made sure every animal had a horrific reason as to why they're behind glass or a cage, I delivered those suddenly very pale-looking buggers back to their mother, failing to mention that the kids had given me her mail address and her phone number, which I then used to fill in every form there to support the zoo or a specific animal, as well as afterwards subscribed her to every animal welfare organization. Absolutely brilliant. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our / I don't work here lady. Who the heck goes to a zoo dressed as a zookeeper? OP does. Guys, I hope you had a great time today listening to the stories and hanging out with me. If you missed the last episode of our / I don't work here lady, a raging Karen attacks police and then she calls the cops. She attacks a cop and then calls the cops. Yikes. Check it out if you haven't, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I love you.